So thanks so much for tuning in and listening, everybody. Of course, we've got listenership in Ottawa as well as Halifax, and we really appreciate everybody's valuable time. We were chatting before we started recording tonight. By the way, we're in new digs here in your. We moved.
We've moved
within your office, right?
Yeah. So for those of you who really want to see, where we're at, we'll put a couple photos up here on social media, and you can certainly check it out on our Facebook and Instagram or on Twitter. And you can kind of see where we're at in the office. You can see what we look like. And we've relocated a little bit because today the sun was shining. And let me tell you, it was blazing hot in my office.
In your office, yeah.
Yeah, blazing hot. So we've relocated out here. We're actually out here in our lobby. And, we're watching the cars go by. We are watching, people walk by here on the street. We're right on the corner of Hollis and George Street, right in downtown Halifax.
Nice. So where I was going with this is we were chatting just before we started recording in the new part of the office here, which is really, I like this better, by the way. I think it should be a permanent move. What do you think?
Well, you know what? As long as the cleaners don't want to come in and, disturb us while
Aren't
we
you in charge?
We also put a couple posters up on the door. So maybe I'll do one of these, like X don't come in if I see anybody coming.
So where I was going with this is I asked you, do you get a lot of feedback from the show, from the radio show? And you said emphatically, yes.
I can tell you of, anything that we do. And, we do lots of media. We do TV and we do radio and we do lots of stuff online and in print. The one thing that people always tell me, they say, Clinton, I heard you on the radio.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot going on in the world, Todd, and I don't want to discount that, everything is just rainbows and unicorns out there. But I can tell you, I think a lot of people are listening to CityNews right now.
Yeah, I agree.
And, they want to see what's going on with COVID. They want to know what's going on with the Ukraine. They want to know what's going on with inflation and the Bank of Canada. And, we're there and we're having those conversations. And I think that's really, really valuable. And, obviously there's a lot going on with the housing market as well. Spring is typically one of the busiest markets of the year. So I think we'll probably have some people tuning in here this weekend.
All right, so while we're on the in the news kind of segment, let's talk a bit about the recent provincial budget and a couple of pretty big, impactful things here. So for those who don't know, why don't you what are some of at least one of the things you wanted to talk about was this D-transfer tax?
Yeah, so the D-transfer tax is now going to be increased for any residents outside of Nova Scotia that are buying properties that will not be occupied by a Nova Scotian. So it's a move that was done by the provincial Tory party that are currently in government here in the province of Nova Scotia. And, they're trying to make sure that the homes, second homes, properties are being occupied by Nova Scotians. We're in a housing crisis here in Nova Scotia, just like many other areas from across the country. There's not enough supply. So it's something that they're doing to, obviously generate some revenue.
Yep.
And they're planning on putting the revenue that they're generating off of this and off of increased property taxes and put this into, some housing initiatives. And, we need it, Todd. We need it. I think in some ways this might be, taxing the rich. And, it's going to be popular and it's going to be unpopular. I think there's lots of ways to potentially generate these funds. And this is something that's been done in other provinces. In PEI already, for years, they were charging extra property taxes for people who lived outside of the province. I can tell you in New Brunswick, if it was a rental property, it was double property tax.
It still is.
And, in Ontario and BC, they put measures in place, and they're working on measures to make sure that properties are occupied. So, Nova Scotia is doing lockstep. I would say we probably have one of the most aggressive policies that have been put forward. It's going to impact that D-transfer tax, but also the property tax, and it's effective April 1st. So it's already in place.
So is it in part to dissuade potentially people from buying properties and not living in properties from out of this? Is that what it's for?
Yeah, I think that's really
partly why.
So, like, for example, if you buy a rental property, and you have you rent it to Nova Scotians, you're cool. That's not going to impact you.
Yeah.
But I think it's really meant to maybe make buyers from outside of the province, but also outside the country, really think twice to be like, you know what, do I want to buy this property? Yeah. Is it going to soften the market, Todd? No.
Probably not.
I don't think so.
Why do you say that?
If you're going to buy a cottage here in Nova Scotia, that's already a luxury item.
Yeah.
You can afford to pay a couple bucks more. It might, though, this is what's interesting. Let's say that, you're somebody who lives outside the province and you've had a second home here for years and it's paid off, but you're a retired person with a fixed income. Mm-hmm. You might decide to put that home up for sale. Mm-hmm. It may put some more supply into the market.
Right.
And it's really hard to know what will happen. But the government is planning on making tens of millions of dollars off of these, measures. And those funds that they're going to generate they're planning on putting these back into housing initiatives that will help potentially, lower income and other maybe developers get more housing stock online, which we obviously do need.
First-time home buyers. There's a Liberal MLA, Laura Nickel. I actually talked to her on my radio show on CityNews 95.7, and she's floating the idea for first-time home buyers having the D-transfer tax, which is 1.5% exempt, pushback from some municipalities because that would impact their revenue. But what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if it's a massive roadblock for first-time home buyers, to be honest.
Yeah. How much is it generally? Like $5,000? $3,000?
It all depends on what the purchase price,
on a
right?
$500,000 purchase, what
You're
would it
talking
be?
like $7,500.
So you go, well, that's significant.
It is certainly significant, and I don't know if that will make a difference between helping or hindering the market, maybe making it even more heated. I don't know if that's a big enough barrier to entry that is keeping first-time home buyers out of the market.
Right.
One thing that I do think that's going to impact, and I did some lobbying with Mortgage Professionals Canada, with MPs from across the country and across kind of our region. We were talking about housing issues that are impacting Nova Scotians and obviously people who live in this region. And one of the issues that we really talked about was around the first-time homebuyers incentive. And I know, Todd, we talked extensively about that. It really, I think, worked well in Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada early on when it was first, rolled out. But the federal government has actually only dispersed about 30% of the funds that they had earmarked for this first-time homebuyers incentive. And one thing that we were really lobbying these MPs about was say, hey, let's ditch this first-time homebuyers incentive and let's change the maximum amortization to 30 years.
Just for first time?
Just for first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
I think that will give first-time home buyers that extra little of affordability that they need, Todd.
That's significant.
And you know what? I'm not against first-time home buyers getting the D-transfer tax waived. I'm not against it. I'm not against it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that is the barrier to entry. I think affordability over the long run is more and more important to them.
How much of a difference, and again, I know it depends on the mortgage and all that stuff, might that make 30 years to 25 years?
You know what? It's actually can make a significant difference, in terms of what the affordability is. I think it's between, 10 or 15%, potentially more first-time homebuyers can get into the market.
Okay. So we got quite a bit of time left in the show, and we're going to talk about, what do you want to get to for sure?
We're certainly going to talk about refinance. I know there's a lot of existing homeowners that are listening to our show and listen to our show all the time, so we really do love that. We're going to talk about refinance. Certainly more refis are being done this spring than have ever been done before.
Okay. Your Guide to Home Ownership with Clinton Wilkins and myself, Todd Veinotte, returns after this.